So here are some demo effects experiment on my Beefy 286. Things that, on the side, while working on other projects, I have some idea that I want to try. And there are ideas that maybe I had that idea 5 years ago, but I never tried it. And then I remember it 3 years ago, and then I remember it now. And so I decided it's time to try it this time. And the idea is, originally I have made this blur. This is a 286, okay? It's a 286 at 20 MHz. It has the chain gloves ISA card, but even with my faster methods to blur the whole screen, this is the blur. You see, you get 12 FPS, 11, 12. This is too glowy, but there is blur here. My God, this is glowing. The glowing is just from the camera. I need to use a capture device at some point. So, and then I have this one, where I am moving some cross and I blur. You can see the blur more here. It's pretty nice. I don't know how to remove this glittering. It's fine. But the thing is, to blur the whole screen is not easy, and the regular algorithm would not get 12 FPS, would get something about 6-7 FPS on this computer. For every pixel, get the 4 neighbor pixels and add them and divide by 4, which is as if tried by 2. And here I have used that technique I'm doing on the 286 because it's a 16-bit computer. I'm doing 2 pixels at once with this technique. Two pixels, 1 byte each, packed in a 16-bit register, and I'm adding the 16-bit register in certain ways and do some correction so that I can have a bit faster frame rate for a 286. And even this one written in assembly, and in ways I know to do it faster and more efficient. It didn't do to blur the whole 320 by 200 screen. It didn't do more than 12 frames there. But recently I have been thinking of a new technique, a specialized technique where I'm using a tile buffer to blur only the areas that need to be blurred. So and here is how I'm doing it again. There are some artifacts though, some vertical line artifacts, but okay. And this is getting now 31 FPS, 31, 32. When this line up, it will get more. Because the idea I had in my mind, and also using my previous fast blur assembly algorithm, but with an extra thing. Suppose you make a demo, you have things move around, but there are parts on the screen right now that are always black because these points never go there. And they are not black. Now they line up. Now they line up in a curve, and the frame rate will 34, 38, 36. Now as they spread, it drops a bit. Why? Because now I'm gonna show you a debug mode that is a bit slow because I didn't optimize that one. I just had this to look at things, and it has bugs there. So as you see, the additional idea, when you have the fastest algorithm for a full screen blur and you cannot do anything, you are doing a demo and you say, okay, in the demo, what if I knew which areas to blur? Those points, as they pass through the screen, I have a tile map of 8 by 8 pixel areas, and this is variable. I can make it 16 by 8, 16 by 16, and so on. Where if in one frame I'm rendering a point that has to be blurred, that tile area had 0 value, but I pump up the value to 64, for example. That's also variable. I can change it depending on what we want. And as long as I'm drawing something in one tile, I pump up the value up. And every frame, all the tile counters decrease. So when some tile counters, there is a long time for anything to be rendered, in those black areas, for example, that are not usually visited. This tile count goes to 0, and you see the tiles get darker. This is the representation. It gets darker blue and 0. When they're at 0, those tiles are not blurred. So I'm partially blurring whatever I want to blur. And that was the idea. And it kind of works, but it has a lot of artifacts and black. So it needs a bit tweaking. If you put a small maximum value on the tile, like 16 or 32 instead of 64, and depending on the frame rate and the objects and the timing, it might leave artifacts. See, we already left some artifacts by switching to that bar. So you can have a full screen doing blur effect on moving stuff, but you can selectively blur only the areas where you need to blur. And I have something that looks like a full screen blur effect on a 286 running at 35 frames. Okay, it's amazing. And now you will see now. That was the idea, and it kind of worked. It just needs tweaking for a demo. And this is just a cross. Now there is something bad that it leaves artifacts, and also look at the frame rate. It's a bit variable. It depends. It goes from 70 to 90. So I have a blurred object all over the screen, and it's glowy now on the camera. I'm doing full screen blurring with an object. That could be a 3D cube made of dots. That could be a lot of other. Oh, why did it disappear there? And it gets over 70 FPS, 70 to 90 depending, on 286. I really love it. Now, if I show the representation, this is where it passes. Now, because it suddenly goes slow, this debug mode is not optimized. Okay, it's just to show me things. And usually I'm running it in a DOS box with a better frame rate. But you see, at the places it passes, it leaves. It sets up the counter for a particular tile, and all the tile counters decrease as time goes, so that when it turns full black, I know I don't have to blur that part. Now that's not the actual representation of what happened here, because it goes faster, and I'm moving the thing based on the timer difference. It goes slow. I can even press V to desync. Okay, it's variable from 70 to 35 sometimes. But maybe I don't need everything. Maybe I need a timer if it's over certain, maybe even 35, to do something, to stop updating it. And now here is everything. So I'm having a lot of moving dots and a moving cross with nice blur, and that's 20, 23, 25 frames, depend, 26 on a 286. That was the idea I had in my mind about tile-based render. Tile-based, like not a tile mapping 2D games, but using a tile representation to selectively render or not render parts of your effect, which could be used for other things in some ways. I'm thinking especially, I'm looking now at Amiga coding, and there is way more work to do per pixel with the bit planes mode. you would have to do a lot of bit operations to manipulate an individual pixel for bitmap effects on the Amiga. So what if this could end it? Someone might have used similar techniques, I don't know. Or you could even mark certain tiles with the number of bit planes that needs to be changed and other kind of stuff. There are all sorts of stuff you can do. This is a really cool technique and it kinda works, but it needs tweaking. And here is how it looks. The tiles that they are passed and faded out. Okay, this is dirty. And for some reason I try, if you have seen in the previous example, it's not visible. I have some artifact, there is a reason for that. Because I'm getting two, on the left and right, I'm not getting the nearby pixel. I'm getting 2 pixels nearby, left and right. No, x minus 2, x plus 2 instead plus 1. Because because I'm doing 16-bit reads with that other trick from the old Blur to do 2 pixels at once. And if I do -1, it works. There is an overhead because of misaligned read. But in this tiled mode, I see some kind of artifact. Now this is the -1. Also the frame rate has dropped a bit, as you see, 22, 23. Not bad, because now I'm doing it more correctly, but I'm doing misaligns. It's not very visible, but there are some vertical lines on the edges of the tiles. Even if at the edge of the tile I'm reading the nearby pixel that is outside of the tile, I'm not restricting into the tile. And you also see some artifacts. Now it's not very visible, but I guess I like both methods, and the second one I can excuse the other kinds of artifacts because it's a bit faster and it still looks nice and fuzzy. Amazing. And that's the one thing. Now the other thing I have been trying and I haven't finished. This is just C code. I wanted to make an assembly version of this code, but I have some issues with the inline assembler of OpenWatcom and I have to look at other solutions. So I was trying to do a sphere mapping on the 286. Now this is the fastest I could do it on the pure C code. I mean, it's not bad, but I know it could be better. I know such a small sphere map on a 286 could do 50 frames or more. And I have a reason for that. So it gets 25-26 FPS here. On my 386 the equivalent code but compiled for 32 bits. I managed to get it 80 FPS. That's a major improvement. But I was planning, and I might show you later on my PC. I was planning to have to do it like they did it on the Commodore 64 and other 8-bits, where they had huge unroll codes for every pixel. Here I'm using some map that is storing the displacement. And you have to read the map and get the value and do the displacement. And I don't remember if it's an X and Y. Oh no, maybe it's a displacement of the 16-bit address. Not the address, the offset from the pixel. So for every pixel I might read from the background, which I have stored in another buffer from an offset. I'm not re-rendering the background. This is like dirty rectangles in a way. As this thing is moving, I'm only replacing the background pixel that have to be replaced from the previous position. So I don't have a big back buffer where I render the sphere and render the whole back buffer to the VGA. That would be much slower for the 286. I don't know, this can be faster, but I wrote already a code to generate the huge unroll codes for every pixel in this sphere. This is a 96 by 96 sphere. And I know it should look more spherical. I should have taken the aspect ratio in account when I generated the thing. I created some huge unroll codes, but as a source file, not as a binary, and I fed it on the OpenWatcom in the inline assembly function, and the compiler crashed. And my other thought is to maybe I should generate the binary, or my code should generate the binary directly. Now I'm generating the source code line. If you say move AX, comma something, I'm generating that as a string. I should generate the 3 bytes for that opcode and upload it somewhere in a memory segment, on a 64K segment. I think the whole code right now fits at 32K, so it should fit. And make a far call there somehow. But even initial tries, I put an opened ret there at certain address. And there are a lot of issues with the inline assembly. I can't even use some other macro, right? Repeat macros for unrolled codes. So I have to find another solution. But if I manage to do this, if I manage to generate assembly code instead of this C code, I could be getting 50, 60 FPS with that one. Maybe 30, 40, I don't know. Because the way you do these kinds of effects, also things like static tunnel effect on the Commodore 64 and other places, which I could do here. The way you do the unroll codes, they are blazingly fast, blazingly faster than what you could do in C. And those things are better for 286 and 386. Maybe on the 486 and Pentium, because of the cache, it's not the best idea, I don't know. After all, those effects on the 486 and Pentium are really fast. You don't even need to do these things. But I was exploring how to make things blazingly fast on the 286, and I have collected a lot of things here. You might have seen the things I have collected. I have shown that before. This is a Gorod cube. The frame rate is not 800. I don't erase the number. This is a Gorod cube on the 286. It's 47. 40, 41. It's not the 3 digits, it's the 2 digits. The texture mapping, about 10 frames on this side, because this is not optimized in assembly like the Guru. But if you put it far, it's... I could do a 286 demo with small objects, with texture mapping and Guru in a 286. The flat is much faster, but it could be faster, because I'm not doing any Modix tricks. Why is it making 50, 58, and then the Guru shading is going at 40? Because I haven't done any Modix tricks for the flat, it's just a representation. And you see there is also a seam, a diagonal seam. This is a low precision thing with a 16-bit fixed point integers. And I also have the trick that, again, I have special methods to... I'm not working like you would work on a 486 where independent. But it might be better at the end to have a back buffer on main RAM where you render everything and then make a mem copy of that back buffer to the video RAM all at once. For the 286, when the object is rotated, I find the minimum and maximum, the bounding box, the 2D bounding box on the screen, and I erase the background and only of this area and then render on top. So if this cube were to move around, it will still, it would be a union of the bounding box of the previous frame with the current frame that will be erased. Really. And I write for horizontal lines to erase with a mem set, for example, or a repstos D for the horizontal lines, and I just change the color. And I also have a version when I do a rep moves D with a part of the background, so I could even have a real background. This is amazing. I normally have more. I have shown that, but I'll stop. I had some fast rotozoomer, fast plasma. I mean, as fast as you can do per pixel. You know, I have shown that before, so I'll stop with that. So guys, here is on my, some things I was trying on my 386. And unfortunately, there's gonna be a lot of glow, and I need to revise a way to capture. You know, capturing is not easy. You need a lot of hardware. I did it for the 3DO, but I need some other hardware for the PC, or I need to bring a laptop near my desktop here. But anyway, that's my beefy 386, and I'm gonna show you some things I was trying to optimize recently. And the one thing is the water effect. So I have this original slow version, and the water effect is a heavy filter effect, but if you do it pixel by pixel, it's gonna be slow on a 386. But this is how it would be, like 7 frames per second. And it's even written in assembly in ways that I try to be as fast as possible. But because for every pixel, it works like a filter. For every pixel you have to get 4 nearby pixels, like the blur effect. But then don't divide it by 4, divide it by 2 and subtract the previous frame. And if the value goes into negative, here's the thing with the water effect. When I tried to do it, if there was an underflow, as you subtract the previous frame, there would be, although, okay, I might try something new, because I just read something about it. But if you subtract, it would go on the negative, and it will, you wouldn't see a water ripples effect, you would see noise covering all over the screen. So it's a very delicate effect. So one thing I did was previously, if it goes negative, to clamp it to 0, but you can also make an absolute. And absolute or even clamp, it can be expensive, because you have to do a check, comparison and a jump. I mean, in ARM assembly it would be easier. You could set a register to 0 if a condition is met. It has the branch conditional opcodes. Every opcode can be conditional, sort of. Maybe some of them cannot be. But this was the way to stabilize it, to not have it bleed through the whole buffer into noisy pixels. And the thing is, you have to do many reads around it. It's good to cost, but this water effect, it surprised. We have seen in the demo scene, in the Iguana demos, possibly first time, and it surprised everyone, because how was it done? Is it some kind of physics of ripple effects for every pixel? But the reality, it was an experimental filter with nearby pixel, like as I described, like you were doing blur with some extra stuff. Somehow works magically. You didn't have to go through every individual ripple and do some physics. Just do the same thing over your buffer and write some points to create a difference. a disturbance in the water. It was a magical algorithm for the one who found it. And the thing is, you have seen that I have devised some methods to make the blur much faster. Not the tile-based methods I show you, but before that, the methods to have 4 pixels at once packed in a 32-bit register. So read the 4 pixels or heights of the water buffer, whatever, or in the blur, and add them together, blur them together with 32-bit operation. So, and it needed some bit corrections to, so that the bytes in the 32-bit register don't bleed on each other's bits. So I have devised some tricks like that, although this is a technique that others have used before, either in the industry or in the demo scene. I haven't heard enough about this technique. And recently I was reading Hacker's Delight, the book with all this bit manipulation tricks. There are a lot of things I didn't know. There are a lot of cool. It's like binary algebra, the way it's defined. And there was a small section with tricks like the one I did. And there was some extra. There was a way to find the absolute value of 4 bytes in a 32-bit word at once with 2-3 operations, 2-3 logical operations, maybe more. So it's kind of costly, but at the end you might be able to do 4 things at once, minus the overhead of doing some extra corrections. And I did apply it to this water effect. You know, the original was this one, 7 frames per second. It's a heavy effect for the 386, And then I got this one. From 7 frames I went to 21 frames per second. It's pretty smooth, which is amazing for 386 because it's... If you have done bitmap based pixel effect for 320 by 200 for 64,000 pixels, even simpler stuff, even a rotozoomer and a plasma cannot easily get much higher. And this one is doing all the things a water effect do, read pixels around, a lot of reads and writes. And with this method I have an effect that you should be watching on a 486 at the speed. I'm running it on 386. And I don't have the noise blitz, it works, it just works, it's amazing. But now, maybe I don't need to run the what. I found some strange things happening. I have some version, so this is not an article, this is a strange thing that happens. I had these versions in my 386, but I never remember this back. I don't know why this happens now and didn't happen before. I would have seen it. See, the frame rate for some reason is the same thing, different experiment. The frame rate is 34. I don't trust it, because I couldn't get anything more than 21. 34, 33, it might jump to 29. And I will tell you, but also see the movement, see, those water things that go around, they stop and go, because I have the timer to do the sine movement for those. I read the timer. I don't know if the timer runs in some interrupt. And in one of my assembly examples, I didn't need to do that at the end, because I figured out a way. I was trying to use the register as much, and I was missing register. And I used the SP register, I think. Yes, that's it. I did an orthodox thing, which is the stack pointer. But I had to store, before my function, store the stack pointer and retrieve it at the end, so that I temporarily use it as an extra register, because I mean, x86 has so few registers, and I like to do the inner loops as much as possible to use register all the time. So in one of these versions of this effect, but I never remember to get these frame rates, and I don't remember these hiccups in the movement of those crisscrossing moving around. And I tried this before, I don't know why, but I know. Because it's getting the timer, I went out of my input. I'm getting the SP, but when I first tried it, I got a crash. Why? Because an interrupt might occur, and it might use the stack pointer to push its address and return. So, before the loop of the effect, before one rendering of the effect, I disable the interrupts. There are CLI and something else, clear interrupts, and then I set them again at the end. And that didn't crash. I could use the SP as an extra register but during the effect, maybe the interrupts would happen. Maybe the interrupts would happen with the timer. But I stopped that. Maybe the timer is increasing a value every time. That's why you see more, I don't know, a bigger frame rate for some reason. I never, even with those examples, the last time I tried, I don't know what happened now, what's different. I never had that thing. It was 21 and you didn't do these hiccups with the movement of the water ripples. They stop and go, because they are also based on the time. And that's what I think is happening. So this is a lie. The correct version is that. That was the best I could get. That's an interesting factor. But again, I had all this version in my 386 and I tried everything. And at the time I didn't have this thing. And I was afraid that it's not a good idea to use the stack pointer for an extra register. And I don't know what I used. Maybe I changed my code in a way to not need to use the stack pointer at the end of the day. I must have used BP because I did something else too. So I even have the good spin mapping. This is the sphere mapping from the 286, but it's compilable for 386. It gets 80 frames per second. Now, when I run the 286 version, I think it got 50 frames per second. Because you have the segment offset model of the 286, and God knows how compiler, it might be hard for the compiler to optimize. Maybe when I point to different tables, it will change the segment address all the time. But if I write it myself in assembly, this is not written in assembly, so it's insane. It's still insane. But compile for the 386 with no segment offset, it might be more efficient code. I don't know if I have it. Yeah. This is getting 50 frames per second. It's not even smooth. Okay, I might be using some crappy timer. You get those, the tile blur thing I did. Maybe those are the old ones. I don't even know anymore. Forget about this because I have old stuff. And I think I had one more thing. I was trying. I don't see it. Yeah. Is it the map or the map 2? That takes time. I was doing some sphere map. This is getting 38 FPS. This is an effect that I did on the Goldilocks demo. It has a XOR texture because it must have XOR texture, because I found a way with the 32 bits. Because I'm always exploring this idea, it's a great idea. With 4 backed pixels to do something. Now, in mapped effects, you cannot do with 4 backed pixels something, because if you calculate U and V coordinates in a 4 backed pixel, then those U and V now have to take sample pixels from vastly different places. How do you create addresses easily? You can do mapping of it. But what if you take the 4U and the 4V, 4 packed bytes in 32-bit, and XOR them together? So you create the texture. But then you can only have XOR texture and maybe some equivalent. But you cannot have a good texture easily. And I think Map2 is an optimized version, slightly optimized. Maybe it's the assembly version. Oh yeah, I think it was the assembly written version. I managed to get full screen mapping, but with this thing that has to be XOR texture and nothing else, at 53 FPS on a 386. Yeah. And you can do this for a tunnel effect, you can do this for a lot of stuff. But unfortunately, is this the same trick with 4 packed pixels in 132-bit value, which you never unpack the bit. You get the value and you add it, XOR it, shift it, end it with some other 32 value, and you get the result in the 32 bits, and you write the 32 bits in the video RAM directly. It's like 4 packed pixel where you work with the 32-bit registers. This is the trick with the fire. I did it with the plasma. For every effect, you have to be inventive in a different way, because this is not simmed. This is not it's poor man's simmed. But this one, you have the 4 pixels. How do you mark different UVs in some far away? Then you have to unpack the pixels. So you are gonna lose a lot of time. But this way, with some optimized code and written in assembly, I managed to get over 50 FPS for full screen pre-calculated mapped effect on a 386. I haven't done some, unroll codes like the Commodore 64 per pixel. It's just a regular loop. Maybe I unroll it 8 times in assembly to gain a bit extra. Yeah, there is a lot of cool stuff there. I mean, maybe I should call it a day, because I will not be able to stop. And so maybe I should show some code and talk a little bit about the issues I was discussing on the videos. So the current thing, the sphere mapping, for example, this is going like that because the cycles are high. So the sphere mapping, I'm using a C version now, as fast as I could, with some lookup tables and some other tricks. Actually, I'm gonna pause it to show something. Press pause, pause. The original version I have the lookup tables to do this mapping, but so I would store that in a square, the lookup tables, and that means that there are some pixels outside. I'm interested for the pixel inside. Now I also, as it moves, I do something like the way dirty rectangles is. Oh god, why? I have a spherical area outside where, as it moves slowly, from the previous frame I erase this areas around with the background to not leave artifacts. And in fact, where the fuck is those box here? Pause. If you put it very slow, it's moved with a timer. That's why you don't see it. I have to show you that. Why not? Now I changed subject. It moves fast. Do you see the artifacts? And it moves fast based on the timer. Because of the way I'm drawing dirty rectangles. So I don't replace the whole background. Do you see it? Because it would be costly on the 286 and even 386 to render in a back buffer, copy the back buffer back and restore the whole background. So I'm only, as I said, I'm only restoring a bit outside of the sphere in a more outside circle. Those pixels around as it moves. And I just try to keep the speed low. That's one thing. So that I don't have artifacts and I only render the appropriate parts. Now, there are also, even if you do that, there are also some pixels outside that I don't want to render at all. So I had to mark those pixels with a number. Maybe I have chosen in my 16-bit offset 32767. And then you have those pixels in the areas that are not in the sphere, but I still have to restore the original background. And I use the original color. The background color is 0 to 63. The colors here, the color palette is 64 to 127. So I can read the background color, add 64 to get the whatever color is here, but move above in the palette to give a different tint. So the pixels inside are different than those outside, which I think those outside that I have still to delete, maybe I mark with minus 30. This is the minimum 16-bit integer and this is the maximum. And if you have a pixel, the offset in this pixel, okay, those are marked with minus. The offset in this pixel, the sphere map might point to some pixel here in the background or some pixel here around. Because the screen is 64,000 bytes, at best the offset would be minus 32 to 32. The offsets on the sphere towards the background. They are not gonna reach minus 32,768 or 32,767. So I use those for markers for this area and that area. But so initially, I don't have this code anymore. Initially, I would go through every pixel and I will know which pixels to skip, and I know which pixels to just get the pixel from the background and do nothing, and the rest of the pixel will get from the offset buffer I generate for the sphere map at some place, which I generate in inner sphere code. No, in inner sphere code. In each sphere, I get the radius. I do some x squared, x by x, y by y. I really do x. And do the substitution on the other side and find a way to find the z, the height towards me, towards the camera for the sphere map, and then I divide that with the original offset to make some offset. And that's how I personally do the sphere map. Although there might be other ways. You could use some refraction equation, but that's how I give that shape. And I optimize that a bit by figuring out the length, figuring out that in this scan line the starting position is in this pixel and this is the length. So if this square is 96 by 96, then maybe this one is 56 pixels and it starts at 30. So I have simply stored in the x offset and x length in my generation. I have stored per scan line the position. So when I render, I go for x0, the offset to x0 plus x length in my loop. And I think also my UL offset, my sphere offset, sphere map. It is stored. I don't store these points anymore. The map is a bit smaller and I just increase it. So anyway, I did this to not have to. So I don't use this anymore. I only use this designation minus 32.76.8 sphere pixel dirty for dirty pixel. Yeah, there it is. I don't use that anymore. The transparent is not. Oh, I still use it to init the render sphere code for. Oh, that's the old code. Okay. To know which pixels to jump there. I might use for the old generation code, which I have the issues with the assembly code. Anyway, I did this kind of optimization. I was getting 20 FPS on 21 on the 286. I'm getting 25 now, as you have seen on the video. But that's still C code. So at some point, I tried to do an assembly. This is an empty cell. This is not the real code. I never recalled it because at some point I tried to generate some unroll code in assembly. Init renders for. I have it commented all the time. I uncommented when I want to get the result for once. And I'm writing opcodes and I'm creating this kind of monstrosity because I thought I don't need to read line offsets and where is the transparent pixel and where is the other pixel and so on. It would be per pixel direct like they did it on the comment. I wanted to do that, but I just haven't done it yet. Because there are issues of how to compile this enormous piece of code without the compiler or something crashing. I think it's DOSBox that also crashes. And in some cases, sometimes I read a byte, and these are the offsets, but these are hard coded inside the code. So it's much better than reading a table and reading another table, reading from memory, then reading from another table. Then I don't even do this thing where I compare for minus 32768 around here. I don't do it because it's all packed in the unroll code. So I predict it will be much faster than the C code if you do it the way they used to do it on the 8 bits and 16 bits and even some early 32-bit demos. Especially if you don't have a cache. So you don't care about enormous code killing your cache. And I started working on this, but I got into trouble. And there were even more tricks. At some places, I do stos W. I write 2 pixels at one. Because, okay, at some places, at most places, I can read from 2 different offsets. So there could be a pixel for here that's taken from here, and a pixel that falls a bit here where I'm mapping. But I can combine both of them in some reads from 2 different positions. This is to add the 64 to go from 063 from the red value to the 64. I could have stored a secondary background. I didn't have enough registers to read from 2 different backgrounds. Okay, but it's just an add. And also I'm adding a BX, which I think BX is 2 packed offsets, plus 64 plus 64 in BH and BL. And I even write 2 pixels of that. And there are places, I just noticed it. I read 1 offset from 1 pixel and I put the same value on the high byte and do the same. So there are places where I read way fewer offsets because maybe you have a very scaled pixel that this map happens to have the same color. Not the same color, the same value, the same address on the frame buffer because these are zoomed in. So the way I generated, there are a lot of optimization. I have talked about that before. If you generate per pixel for every, not only I don't have to read from extra maps and extra maps and extra maps, and these marker values to know where I'm outside. So this should be, if I implement, it would be much faster. But I have an issue. I would generate it here. Now this is how I do it. I know I have to do it in a different way. I would copy it here. I would compile it, and that's not good because it's gonna take ages. I just wanted to test it. I wanted to test it after compiling if it worked and how much faster. I was curious how much faster I can get. I put some turbo because it's going to take for never, not forever, for never. Okay, and so I cannot do this way. I have to find another way, and I already know what to do. Is it going to do it? I don't think it's going to do it. And yeah, That's actually a DOSBox error. No byte handle to write. Unfortunately, I can't do it, and I shouldn't be doing this. The Open Whatcom inside assembler is not for such thing. It's for system calls to. Even if I'm using it at some place, but not like this. I had maybe I had an example. I was doing the rotozoomer like this, and I had a reason to do it like this. And people usually they find this thing ugly, but it's how you would do stuff. But you don't need to do it on the source code, of course. I could unroll, but I could unroll one line. It's much fewer. It's not so big. Ah, that the exclusive or rotozoomer. Huh. Not even with a text, but anyway. I have a regular version with a loop. The reason I was doing it like this, I thought I had another one. Ah, that's the one. That's the pure proper one with a texture. Ah, no, that's still exclusive or. Down. I was just looking at that before. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay, these are smaller. The reason I was doing the unroll, people say you don't need to unroll 320 times, 160 times. 320. This is writing byte. I have much better version where it's writing words. Maybe this one. This one is writing words. Yeah. I think that was the one. The reason I do it is because look how I'm going through every pixel and you don't see. Everything is in registers. And it's hard. In x86 you have very few registers. And usually when you compile even something simple, the compiler produces code that they try to use the register as much as they can. But I see some places where with some effort you could not use the registers. The memory. So you have a variable that you know. If I had enough enough register, this variable should be prepared in a register and use all the register all the time. Not unnecessarily read and write variables from memory. And there are other. If you have global variables, it has to read them from the memory. There are other things. So there is a great effort. This is how I made some things faster on this early machine. Maybe this is not as good on a Pentium or other. There are other optimization rules there. You can run two instructions in a way in the two pipelines, and you could, if you use the same register, it might not put them in the pipeline. So maybe those are things that are relevant for all demos in a 386 or a 286. This is how I made those rotozoomer much faster. But that's the other thing. This, I know I had another version. I mean, come on. There could be a repeat macro something, but I can't find it on inline assembly. And I have other issues. You could have a... Ah, that's the right one. That's with the texture. It's beautiful. And that even... It calculates the pixel, AL, AH, in system EX, and then gets the other one. As much as possible happen in register. You have U and V, like U in 8 fixed point, and then the high byte of CX is the high byte of the fixed point, the high byte of DX, the DH, you put in BLBH, read from the text. It happens to be a 256 text, 256 by 256 text, 264K example. It's a big texture. Get the AL. You got the AH first, then the AL. Shift on the 32-bit. I even do that and write 4 pixels one. That's how I got 35 frames per second on the 386. And the 16-bit version on the 286 got 17 frames. See, they are a beautiful thing like that. But this one is I think this is repeated 80 times. Like 3 times by 4 is 80 times. I could have some repeat 80 or something, and however, I found the syntax, but it doesn't. The compiler Whatcom tells me now throw some mistakes either, and I was searching for documentation, and I came to the conclusion there are a lot of things I cannot do that would make my life easier. I have to not use I have to use the inline assembler for other things and not that. And even this is how I made the Guro shading fast. With a monstrosity. This is not a monster, this is beautiful. This is doing 2 Guro. 5 instructions where 4 of them are very simple. The first one, simple register opcodes to do the Guro shading. Pixel 1, pixel 2, and write 2 pixels. This is how you do it so fast on the 286, and this might be repeated 160 times. I should have a repeat 160 or something, and I can find it. But why? A scan line on the Guro shading is not filling the whole screen. I try to calculate an offset address and do a jump somewhere inside, so this is variable depending on the scan line size of the rasterizer, depending if you want to render 50 pixels horizontally or 320 at best. This would work for the Guro shader. But somehow I wanted to somehow do oof label, but maybe the label is relative, I don't know. I'm not just doing that randomly. I was looking at some documentation of various assemblers, even Whatcom, and I couldn't make the compiler not throw an error, not throw like, I don't know what is this thing. I couldn't get this label. This is the annoying thing. And somehow I disassembled this and I found that I could, in this case, of course, if I write something else, this will move. So it's horrible. But that's the way, because it has tied my hands, I would just test on the 286 how fast I can do this thing. I don't like this. I don't like that I have to write it like this. So I have to change my strategy. I have to stop. I have to only use the inline assembly for things like that. Wait for vsync, set video mode, change the palette, and so on. Set pal color. I should be using this for little things like that, system call testing. But if I want to do an enormous unroll code to do all these classic tricks as fast as possible, which is my passion, like make the 286 make things that are good. I think one day I'll collect this in a demo. I'm just experimenting with things, and I have pretty fast things for the 286. If I want to do it, I have to look at something else. I have to look. I have MASM here. I have to make my makefile, compile some MASM, and see how I can connect it with the C code, or even create binaries that I will load as file, upload in an address, and make a file call. That's the other thing. I was looking for the possibility for here to make a call far, something like that. Call far work, call far something. I look at documentation, I look at the internet, I found various syntaxes. I was looking on the Open Wacom documentation. I would compile and I would get an error like, I don't know what is this. I couldn't do it. And I went so far as to define some hex that represent that by using phasm. I don't have it. I was doing some org call far and using it to create the binary, read the binary and pass it here just to make it work. But this is not right. This is very dirty. But I'm doing it not because I'm a dirty coder. I'm doing it because I am so curious to try this. I'm so curious to try how fast it goes on 286 that I cannot spend 3 days to figure out. And I should put away the inline assembler for such thing, and I should learn how to use external assemblers or even that's the inline. I can use I think Wacom has its own assembler too, isn't it? Yeah, there is a W. Is there a WASM? Or maybe use NASM. NASM or MASM or whatever. That's a project. That's a thing to do. Try to learn the new tools and do it the other way. Then I will replace all this repeated unroll codes with macros, and also maybe I will even be able to compile monstrosities. The other idea is instead of generate the source code, generate the hex codes for this. Whatever. Generate byte per byte. Find out on phasm what is a STOS W, what is a move AS. But the way I was doing on Z80 assembly at some point to generate error codes and write them directly in some address and make a far call, which I still cannot make a far call here, even without. Maybe I could make a far call. Maybe I can get a far pointer and do a far call, a virtual function, a function pointer in C. I can ask it to do some malloc. I think I'm even doing a far malloc. Oh, it's not here. There is a underscore f memset, so there has to be an underscore f malloc. I should be using that. Look, I'm doing dirty stuff right now. I have been chastised for that on point. I assume these are free because I'm doing tests. Okay, I'm so dedicated to look how fast things can do. These are just experiments that I don't learn to fix things first. This is the blur code, by the way. You have to assign this far all the way, and I'm wondering if the compiler is generated slower code where it has different segments and offset, and every time I'm doing some reads it might set the segment register, the ES or DS in some value and set it every pixel, while in assembly I would set the DS, ES one, and I never touch them through the inner loop. I never touch them. I know that DS, this is like DS DI really. Is that, and the STOS W is writing on ES. I think ESDI or ESSI. These are confusing with the segment offset. I have various ways. This is the unrolled one. I did a little unrolling here just to gain a bit extra. And here you see Oh, that's a plus. Ah, yeah, that's the old version. I add the neighbor pixels. I even have a trick where, as you move to the right, the previous pixel is your pixel in a way. Although it's the blurred pixel, but that works, and I do it in 3 because I keep the AX. I don't. But it's the blurred value. It's not the original pixel from the previous. I don't use 2 buffers, and it does work. And this is the tiled version. Oh, and again, I'm doing the pixel. I'm adding to AX because it's 2 pixels at once. Okay. I'm offsetting +1 and -1, which means it's an unaligned read. Here, I had to do an aligned read because with the tile because I had an issue. I was seeing some line artifacts in the tile for some reason. But this also produces artifacts. It doesn't it? It's kind of a fuzzy tile. See, I'm going through every tile. In the tile, I reduce it by 1 if it's above 0. And later on, I will test. Oh, look, I'm doing, oh god, I'm using SS. I don't know if I should be using those registers. And there is the water version. The water effect I showed you. Oh, I don't use ESP anymore. There was the version that I was using the stack pointer for extra. But I changed something and I don't need to do that anymore. Anyway, and I was doing more tests. This is the Pentium version because I realized I was doing this version from Hacker's Delight. 4 bytes in 32 bits, but its pixel is 8-bit. So you have a 32-bit and you read 4 pixels left and right, although it's -1. In the water effect you cannot do, if you do this, if you say, okay, I'm gonna cheat a bit to not have an unaligned read. No, this is going to produce horrible noise. It's going to break the water ripple effect. You can't do dirty things. It has to get the pixel on the left and the right. So you do unaligned reads. Okay, it's worse on the x86. On the ARM it crashes, and I did some other tricks with some more overhead to still make it go. And you still gain some good speed, minus the overhead. And you need to do some, okay, this is to get the high bits, signed bit of the bytes, 4 times, shift them to the low position. I try to do it bit by bit on paper, and it makes sense why this thing. It seems a lot of stuff, but then you do 4 pixels at 1 absolute. You add 4 pixels at 1. You say, this is still the water effect thing. The absolute start here. Well, you shift right by 1, divide by 2, instead by 4, which you would do with the blur. So your value go high. I do some padding of the high values, and then you subtract from the previous buffer 1, 2, which I will swap later. It fucking works. This was the version byte per byte, the individual byte per byte version. Now, I didn't use the absolute. You could also do a clamp, and it still maintains the equilibrium without bleeding the colors into noise. And yeah, it's amazing. I was trying version. At some point, I was curious. I was doing this for 386. I was like, is the C version? How does a compiled C code does against the assembly? And on the pen, I think on the 386, I think this was getting. Maybe it was close to the assembly version. Maybe it was 19 frames instead of 21, or maybe it was 15 frames. I don't remember. But on Pentium, this was faster than my assembly code. But why? Because in Pentium, the compiler will produce code that is more relevant to the pipelines. So I tried with some rules I knew. I don't know everything about Pentium. I tried to see if I can perform better, and I managed to get a bit more frame rate. By here, I also do EABX here. Come on, this is not the 3. I use EAX, so those two cannot be pipelined on the Pentium, and those two cannot be pipelined on the Pentium. So I ended reading in EAX, EBX, those two can be pipelined in one, can be run in parallel, let's say. I don't know if parallel is the right word. And so now I add EAX to this, and I add this to EABX. But now I have to do the extra step to add EAX to EBX to add the two. So I add those values on EAX and EBX on parallel, and then I add them together. So I do one extra step, but this gave me some speed. Then I do some more stuff. I used to have a loop function. Loop is doing decrease ECX and jump not 0. But I read in Mike Labra's book that loop is slower in Pentium, maybe even on 486, definitely on Pentium. Maybe purposefully, maybe something else changed in the hardware, in the architecture. On a Pentium, you could do things in 2 instructions, the same thing, and it would be faster. So I did that. Also, for some reason, things like, I don't have it anymore. I don't see it. I used to have stores W to store the pixel. Stores D actually, the DB. But this is also like saying move EDI, comma EAX and go to the next one. And anyway, I fought with that with a bit some. Maybe I have some other places where I do things with alternating register to take advantage of the pipeline, and I managed to get it a bit faster. And on my Pentium 166 megahertz, this one would get 255 FPS. This assembly, the naive assembly version that is good for the 386 would get 32 FPS. So the compiler won the assembly version because it's done the pipeline well. And this pipeline version, and that could be more. It did 28 FPS. So I finally managed with some consideration about the pipelines at some places, replaces of the loop with decreases 6 and jump and not using stos D but doing it in a different way. I did manage to get 280 FPS against 255 in the C version combined with Wattcom. Maybe DJGPP would do even better. I don't know. So you see sometimes you can write your best assembly and might not be best enough because there are new rules. This is good for the 386. But with some more reading on Pentium optimization, you get it more. But it doesn't matter because those were extra experiments I was doing. It doesn't matter because the initial plan was to do it on the 386. And I also have the mapping here. This, I call it tunnel, but it's the exclusive or texture mapping with the 4 pixels at 1. I'm doing stuff. And this, okay. These are the precalcs. And where is the C effect? I don't have the C code anymore. Did I just do it on assembly? It's commented out. So these are UNV display. What? I'm doing 4 pixels at 1 packed some way. And the displacement, I prepared it in such a way. But there is a range of the values so that they don't bleed over the nearby bytes. It's the same thing now. Again, I was trying to do the Pentium version. EAX, ESP, EAX, EDX. ADAX. I don't remember. I was trying to optimize it for the Pentium. I don't see much differences here. Or maybe not. Maybe this is some kind of optimization for 386. No, I don't do the loop anymore. I do the decrease. Here I do the loop. But maybe I'm doing more. And the horror, as I said, I'm using the stack pointer because I needed that register, which is still not good idea. I don't know if the 50 frames we have seen are really 50 frames or the timer doesn't work. I'm pushing the ABP, else it will crash, but I'm clearing. This is clear the interrupt flags, so no interrupt happens, and when I finish the whole effect, I restore the interrupts. Because if an interrupt happens and yes, the stack pointer is not pointing where it used, and I have the store, I retrieve it from the store. Yeah, I was doing this because I needed that extra register. I'm using EAX, EBX, ECX for the loop. It's 1D loop. EDX, EAX, BX6, DX, ESI, EDI. There are not enough registers on x86, and some of them have to be the segment and the offset registers. The segment, okay, those are the offset registers. The segment register cannot be used, and you have EBP, which I also push. And then I need one more. I didn't want to have my variable. See, this is how I work in the old school in Z80, so maybe people don't go that way. Because have I tested if I was doing this it would be slower? I think it would to read extra memory for a variable that is, and this variable might be even, no, I'm read it from somewhere. Anyway. So I even needed it there. Where should I read it? I would be doing something like move ebx, comma, my variable, comma. Okay. Yeah, whatever. And so now I did, the compiler would do that. It would say, not enough register. I have to use the memory for some. Do you get it? Do you get it why I'm fighting? And there are cases where I was doing this. I was looking at the compiler and saying, some things that could be stored in the register, the compiler has to use memory for storage. So in the inner loop there is unnecessary read. The only necessary is that, because those are this and this. I look at my code. I have to do 2 reads and 1 write in the video RAM. What's the minimal thing that my code should do? I don't want extra memory reads because no register. And sometimes the compilers, I don't think they go out of the way to. use the stack pointer, which is horrible to do that. So I ran it a lot. The thing is, okay, enough with the DOS stuff. The thing is, I was planning more for Optinews. I was planning to talk about 3DO, which is the main thing. Although I haven't done much with 3DO. Last time, you have seen the video, I started working on this Bizarro Underground. So I'm just gonna talk about my plans. My plan is just to finish this by the next year probably. Because I said next year. I don't think I can finish it this year. And the other reason is I have plans also to continue with Optinews, which I have left it because Doom was released on December 10, 1993, and it's soon there will be the 30 years of the first Doom. Not the 3D Doom, the first Doom. So I thought, how about pushing me? And it's December. I don't know if I will manage it to make the next version. We are at version 0.2c. I didn't go with version 0.3. I mean, those version numbers are very arbitrary from my side. Normally, the version numbers have a meaning. 0.3 doesn't mean it will take forever. It will take 20 years to see version 1. It's just arbitrary. Maybe 0.3, maybe not. Maybe at 0.5 you would have a really complete version. Because the main focus goes to find ways to make things faster, not slightly faster by removing the floor or changing the scale, but do something actual with, especially with the floor and the ceiling rendering. Try to see if you can replace that. My big goal, the this plane rendering with something entirely different, and it's a hard task. And if I am focused, I can get at some point. And I said last in myself, if the next version doesn't have this, it's not going to be 0. It's going to be 0.3. If not, it's going to be 0.2D. We reach 2D. It's doomed 2D or 3D, you know. I want the next version for December to be 0.3, and I want to have attacked the main problem. But I don't think, I'm not, it could be, even if I manage to actually make it work, I don't render the floor with some kind of polygon stuff or other ways. Trying to avoid a lot of the CPU work that have to be done to calculate and create the displays and use them and do the software rendering. It doesn't mean that there might be other places that even the wall rendering sometimes takes, if there are a lot of tiny walls, like in the stairs or other places, they steal a lot of time. Even there's a lot of CPU work. It doesn't necessarily mean I will get the speed I want. But that's my plan. So, there is a probability I will release a version by December at the anniversary, 30 years anniversary of Doom. There is also a probability I won't, or I could do the 0.2D where I will not have fixed that issue. Although what else is there to do for 0.2D? I did some attempts to do actually gamma correction, but I have some issues with the 3DO hardware. It doesn't work on the real 3DO, or the way the OS logs you out of the hardware, out of the low level access, and the way Berger Becky set up the Doom screen, I couldn't use some high level functions to change to fade out or change the color mapping from linear to the gamma corrected one. But it worked like a charm. Let me see, I might have it. I had. I have a bizarre underground. I have a bizarre underground now. I didn't post anything. Okay, I can. I'm trying. I did little things. I just did the level completely screen. And the idea is, if you go outside of the map on the stars, that's how I'm gonna do it. It's the exit. So you would be in some crazy caves and you won't be able to exit. But if you see some starry things outside, it's like, yeah, I'm going to the stars. Am I showing here? Ah, yeah, I fixed. See, the weapon has changed now. It's this elongated thing. I had a problem with the orientation. I fixed things with my matrices. So when you look up now, the orientation is correct for this elongated thing. I used to have a gem that would rotate manually. So I fixed that, and I also fixed things with the stars. I don't have a video. So I did kind of a work already after the release. And I also optimized a bit the engine. I think this is running on Phoenix, and it does have a... The initial release was getting 10 frames per second in some screens. Now it gets 15 to 20. But there is more optimization. And now in Optinews, this is what I have done. Gamma correction. Yeah, and this is changing. Maybe I'm showing the other stuff. When I get the items, I don't show it. The flashes on the screen, when you get red, Burger Becky would do a quad overlay that gets red to create the impression. But there is a final pass in the 3DO hardware that changed the linearity of the 16-bit video RAM to a final 24-bit value for the display. And there are some high-level functions on the 3DO API to change that, and you can even make the screen more red, more blue, more green. You can map the linear RGB to the non-linear values. It's really cool. But Burger Becky would set up a special screen where this upper black screen would have weird values on the hardware. This would be 200 pixels or maybe less. I think 200. And this would be, because the resolution is 240, so it would be a hack with multiple screens. And those functions, those high level functions don't work. And I had to do... look at this. I even colorized it the way I want it. I go through all the RGB. And this is cheap. This is not... I'm not wasting any time on the 3DO. This is magical because it's on the final step of the hardware. You can colorize your game. And there are high level functions, but if you set up multiple screens, something failed with that. Cursed Doom. If you set up multiple screens like Becky did, this is on the emulator. Those high level functions don't work. So I had to do some magic on the VDL point or something, and I realized that worked. But to overcome this, since Doom is defining a custom VDL, that is plus 13 goes later. This Gorgon emulator. On 3DO it crashed. Because this video pointer is set up, I printed it later and it was very low, I think either very low in the video RAM or somewhere high outside of memory. It's a hardware pointer. I think it's low. So it's in a memory, it's a memory that is protected by the operating system. This is the low level access. It's not the assembly, it's not the writing assembly, it's not doing some bit shifts. It's the special areas that I could directly write in the video RAM to affect the hardware that the 3DO operating system doesn't allow me, because that's what they've done. And that would work on the emulator, because the emulator doesn't check that. I don't know. This will crash on the real 3DO. All this gamma thing I did, it goes wrong. Because if I use the high level functions, and I don't know if I talk, there are some high level functions to do it in C. It works for a single screen. I actually use it in Bizarro Underground. In Bizarro Underground, there is a place, you go to some place and the screen gets red because you get damage. I use it there with the high level function because I have set up one screen. But the special sophisticated setup of multiple screens, this function does work. There is nothing else. And even the functions themselves say, if you set up multiple screens, this will not work. But they don't give you access to the OS. They are like, fuck you. Figure it out yourself. And that pointer is trying to read in the memory mapped area, and it does change that, but it crashed the real 3DO. And that has pissed me off, because I have done so much work there. That would be a neat feature. And even when you get damage, when you get the health potions and the screen gets red, as I said, Burger Baking would render a big flat quad in front with blend enabled, which could have some overhead. While I can do it directly with this, and I even incorporated those ones. And I can do, after all the calculation, the RGB, there is much more code for the wall setup, but because I cannot do that, and I have to find some other way through the, maybe set up a different set of video screens. It's crazy. That could be a big feature. It would go to the next version. Anyway, I talk a lot. I will also work on the Bizarro on the group. I have so many ideas to. I might have to work on the actual game and even make an editor on the PC, some simple editor, where I will fly around and with Minecraft control I would erase and write blocks, because now I have some procedural generated code in C to make some caves, and it's tedious to make levels. There are so many things that can be done. And I can make actual gameplay with enemies and polygonal enemies and other stuff floating around and some more rules. And you go to the end and the next level is loaded. It keeps how many gems you have. So there are stuff to do. So Optidoom, Bizarro Underground, and by the way, the version level doesn't make sense. Why is the game jam version 1? It should be version 0.2. And I should reach version 1. But anyway, I have also done version 1.0.2. I haven't uploaded, with some more frame rate improvements. And finally, the thing I should spend a bit of time, there are many people in our Discord, on the dev channel, on the homebrew. Sometimes there are newcomers who ask, they want to learn, and they ask for tutorials. Some people have learned from my videos, my random videos and other stuff, and the documentation. And it's embarrassing because I started those tutorials, setting up the development environment, how to clear the screen with single color and clear the screen with a background color using the S-Port DMA some other hardware that you don't have to render a full cell quad. In many cases, you have to do that. And I have explained that stuff. Also, you can vsync, but if you use the Sport DMA that renders the background, it vsyncs for you. That one has to lock with the frame rate, but the single core one doesn't. If you just clear with a black background, it does. So there are some cases. I explained the very basic stuff, and I was supposed to. People have seen this tutorial and like, okay, I can clear the screen. How do I render a single thing? And I didn't even start it. I even have it here, and it's embarrassing. I know. I realized that I wanted to do self sprite, zooming, rotating sprite, and maybe do some arbitrary polygon, explain the vectors, the faster map cell function, the map cell functions that you can use, and also explain how they work so that you could write your own if you wanted. Maybe I will have chapter 3, 4, 5. Maybe at least some chapters should be here. I started this years ago, and people find this tutorial and they are like, when are they gonna be finished? And the thing is not, some of this I could write in a few evenings, in 2-3 evenings, each tutorial. Or even if I'm very dedicated, I could write the tutorial in one evening, in one sitting. But every time I go there to continue writing, and I should have written at least the basics one so that people can write some sprites. It's embarrassing that 2-3 sprites, rotating sprites, and how to link your sprites for faster. And maybe some arbitrary polygons without the 3D rotation. Maybe then some hardware matrix stuff. I should have the basics at least, and then so that there's something to look beyond the nothingness. But I realized when I'm focused, okay, I'm more motivated to actually code my own stuff, to do those demo scene experiments, to sometimes code Optinews Bizarre Underground or other experiments, than writing tutorials. Writing tutorials seems easier because it's not a complicated coding. You just have to sit down and write and explain things. But every time I sit down to write, I don't have. I want to finish it. I have an idea for my YouTube channel. I have an idea of something that will be between a tutorial, but of a different nature, of a very interesting nature. But it also will create certain frameworks of code that people can use to make their own games. I have a certain idea, but I will only think about it later after I finish those tutorials. Oh boy. And finally, because I cannot stop talking about experiments, actually I have done more experiments. We have a long time to talk, and you know, there are so many things I forget. I was doing some GBA stuff. But wait a minute. Is it here? Let me find it. Is it here? What the hell is that? Why can I not find it? FX scene. Not FX scene run. Sorry about that. Oh, hold on. So many crap here. Ah, there. That's a different project. That one was an engine. This one I have shown you. I'm trying more effects. That's the sphere mapping. Okay, let's start from scratch. I'm not gonna show everything. I'm just gonna show the new things I added. I have shown the other things. I have shown those. Just I ported the water effect, the one with the 32-bit pixel, 4 pixels one. Ah, come on, where am I? That's the water effect. It gets 25, 26 frames on the GBA. Of course, the GBA resolution is lower. To do the 4 bytes at once, the GBA has different video mode. There is a 16-bit video mode, but there is an 8-bit palletize. 8-bit palletize is very convenient, like the VGA on PC. And this way I can also have 4 pixels at once. And even the 16-bit had RGB, separate RGB, so it wouldn't work. Here I can have a gradient palette and do this trick. So I get a nice 26 FPS on the GBA. And now I needed to do some extra stuff. So I'm doing the packed things you have seen. So this happens to be, those are 4 pixels now. Water effect in 4 bytes packed in 32 bits. This is for correction. It's like I'm adding the nearby pixels together, minus the previous buffer, the absolute value. I'm doing less stuff here, or not? Or maybe the, okay, no, those are the ones I will do. Absolute value for 4 bytes packed in 32 bits, separately. Brilliant. But I'm doing more things here for the horizontal, because in the water effect you go -1 +1 minus screen width. Screen width. You get the below, above pixel and left and right pixel. If you do -4 +4, it doesn't work for the water effect. It's going to create horrible noise. It totally breaks it. You have to do -1 +1. But what are you doing -1 +1 normally? You would be doing you would be doing, I do a -1, but that's a different -1. This is, do I do -1? Ah, but this is, why? How does it? Forget about that. Ah, that might be an integer. So -1 is -32 -4 bytes on the right. Forget about it. But I'm casting this pointer to one side char, so does that come later? Forget about this. The thing is, I had issues with misaligned reads on the ARM with crash. They would crash. So I couldn't do it. So what I really was doing is, I guess I'm going -1 and then I'm reading. Okay, I think this is like that. So this -1 is not on the, but is on the word pointer. So it goes and reads this whole thing. And then I cast it into a char pointer to get the byte. I think that's what I'm doing. I'm not sure. Generally speaking, I'm doing the extra work. This should be one line. But I'm reading this and this. I'm reading this, and then I break it. Because I cannot do misaligned read. Okay, it's hard to explain, forget it. It seemed like it does misalignment. That's why I do +4 to go to the next. But no, I'm casting it with the char. Oh. I'm not doing this. Here I read a byte. This is a byte. I might be writing into an int, but finally here I read the individual byte. Do I have it? Okay. So this is casted. This is not a int 32 pointer. This is a byte pointer now. So but -1 I get this byte. +4 from here. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm getting the. So I end up getting the bytes. This is a byte read. This is a char read. So this doesn't have an alignment issue. And then here I'm still reading. This is a 32-bit pointer. I'm still reading those as a whole, and those two pixel. I'm doing some combination. I'm combining this and this. Actually, those and those to get those 4 bytes in a 32-bit. In the other side, I'm getting those 3 on this side and this. This is how I overcome the fact that I want to read those misaligned 4 bytes, misaligned 32-bit without crashing. So I have the extra overhead with this one. And even here, this one. It's a lot of overhead, but it still made it possible to run this effect and get the results I wanted. And here in the emulator, it would run with mistakes if you did it in another way. But, so, to do this thing on the ARM, I had to do some extra stuff. The rule is right here. You might say, there is a lot of, isn't that an overhead? Isn't that going to be slower? No, the rule is, if you have an algorithm that works on 8-bit, and somehow you can make it 4 pixels at once. Okay, if everything was perfect, you did the exact same operation, this would be -4 times faster. So you already go 4 times faster. But then you have to do corrections and extra bit shifts to make this work because no simmed, fake poor man's simmed. So it's +4 minus corrections overhead. This will get you from 2.453, whatever. I'm just putting. So, if you manage to write an algorithm with this trick, it's like when people try to do parallelism with 4 cores, with 8 cores. The theoretical maximum you could get would be 4 times. Unless there's something that could get more or less. But because of the overhead and the things you have to do, you will drop. But because it's so high, it's 4 times faster. In worst case scenario, you could maybe you do something horrible and you get, I don't know. So many times it's worth it. Things like that. Okay, I'm doing a lot of junky stuff here. That's extra stuff. But because it makes the algorithm work with 4 pixels at once, like simmed, I'm still around that range. Usually I'm right. On the 386, I got from 7 FPS to 25 FPS. That's 3 times more. I didn't got the 4 times, I got the 3 times. You know, it's the same with the Blair algorithm. I think with Blair algorithm I got 3.5 times. Without the other algorithm I got... So in many cases, unless you do something excruciatingly complex, in many cases, this thing... I didn't want to close it. Can get you into good places. Now, finally, let's talk about the sphere mapping. You have to think 4 times minus the overhead, minus the tediousness with the bit corrections and all that stuff. But it's still cool if you can make it. Now, this is the C version, of course, the same as the 286, written for the 386, a bit differently. This is pretty cool, it gets 96 frames per second. Two things. In the sphere map code, I ported it recently, but I found this fx underscore sphere much in the past. It was empty because I wanted to implement it. I didn't implement till I came back and implement. But in the old version, I don't have it here. I don't have it anymore. Anyway, I had some comment. Okay, this is implemented in the video RAM buffer. But my previous goals were to use the sprites, the hardware sprites of the Game Boy Advance, and write the sphere map on the sprite so that I could move this as a sprite around, and I don't have to do the dirty rectangles and do the outside thing. But this is not what I was. This is just the port. That's one thing. I have different ideas for this effect. The idea is to draw this onto the hardware sprites to make this even faster and more easy to move around over a background without having to restore the background at the places with dirty rectangles or whatever and store this extra. I'm not using that. I'm using the dirty anymore. See, I don't use the transparent. I'm using the version with the offsets, which is a bit faster. Now, do you see those? The Game Boy Advance has 32K internal work RAM. This is fastest, but it's small. External work RAM, slower. And the cartridge, more space. Don't know about speed compared. Okay. And you can tell the compiler to run something on the internal work RAM. If you say external work RAM or comment this out, suddenly you get 37 FPS. Actually, in this effect, the change was enormous. In other effects, I was getting a 50% increase, maybe double the speed. In this effect, for some reason, it has compiled much better. You get enormous from 32, you get 3 times faster. So it matters if you didn't know this trick. And also, there was an initial setup, you need to wait states maybe. A setup I found to set 0 wait states for the cards and the fast card, so that also improved the speed. So if I don't do that, I get, Okay, 99 to 1. Maybe it's small decrease. Is it in combination maybe? So if you okay, you don't do that. Okay, that goes 37. Okay, I think now the code runs in EWRAM, or does it run? I'm not sure. Actually, let's see that. And also you can change the target to thumb, but in some cases ARM is faster. EWRAM is actually slower, 27. So if you comment this out, does it run from the card? Is it code that is static code that it doesn't change? That runs from the cartridge. And now, if you not call this, that is, I found that somewhere, this would put a certain value that changes the wait stage, the memory wait stage. It has the fastest wait stage. That in some cartridges could create a problem, but in all those storage cartridges for homebrew, it's okay. No wait stages. Oh my god, it's more. It's 17 frames per second. Those are the things. When one started coding for the Game Boy Advanced, you didn't know that you could increase the wait stage in the cartridge. The thing is, if you put that in the IWRAM, because I guess it's in the IWRAM and it's not running there, but other parts of the code, although they are small, might be running there, it's still okay. The overhead is small. It goes 90-91 when it stabilizes. And if you enable this one, okay, so this goes worse for regular code that you cannot upload in the EWRAM because the EWRAM is small and you can't upload everything, or you have to do something more. Okay, okay, still 96.7. We went from 17 FPS to 97. You know, we were coding. I have a friend who was coding on Game Boy Advance too, and we were watching Game Boy Advance demos, and we were like, because we tried to code our own stuff too. He tried to code things too, and I tried to, and we were like, how are they so fast? I write things and it's horrible. We didn't do that to disable the wait states to improve reduce the wait states, which I think it's on the cartridge. Maybe it's on the RAM too. I think they were cartridge wait states. And we didn't do things like that to upload certain functions. You can also upload tables, but can you do this here? You can do this. There was a different way. Okay, I have some allocator to allocate, but the thing is the size. And maybe this. Those are small. I don't want to do that now. And then we have seen the light. We have seen, oh my god, things can be twice fast, 3 times fast. Depends. Actually, let me try thumb too. I think with thumb this is slower. And I will try something else. It's a bit slower, 82. Now, ARM's size of instructions. The instructions are bigger, but you have more instructions. The compiler finds more instructions to do things. efficient. Now they have the thumb mode. This exists in Game Boy. It doesn't exist on 3DO. It exists in later ARMs. Some people prefer it. It's good for size optimization. Size. Somehow they managed to squeeze instructions in. And you might say, isn't this faster? The thing is, when you have 16-bit, you have fewer instructions and fewer instructions modes. So in the ARM you could do move, I don't remember now, R12, Shift 4. Now the syntax is wrong, I don't remember, and also make a comparison. Add if 0. That's the wrong syntax, okay. You could do things like that, and some of these things, especially if you have shift and other stuff, the compiler could do magic. The compiler could, and even you as an assembly code, you could do 2-3 lines of code in one code. Because of this, no, the thumb, because it reduces the instruction to fit things in size, in space, you are missing a lot of this extra stuff that the compiler might use to optimize. So from what I have seen, thumb in many times when I try to put things in IWRAM is slower. But because IWRAM is only 32K, if you start putting a lot of stuff in IWRAM, you get a compiler error. At some point I will reach a point where I won't be able to fit more things in the compiler, and that was a case when I was trying to port my 3D engine, and those are the rasterizers. Draw and the alias line. So there is a big code. Prepare edge list guru. Prepare. And see, I have the fill guru edges, the rasterizer for the, because the code is bigger. If I goes to uncomment everything, so that I can fit all this function in the IWRAM, I will get compiler errors like no space anymore. So I think I have to see, maybe, I don't know what is this thing it doesn't seem to do much. IWRAM BRK. I need to see that. The clever way in the future is to figure out how could I allocate things in IWRAM and copy parts of the code that I want to run there, and then deallocate and copy other parts of the code. So if I'm saying showing a demo effect, run it on the IWRAM, I don't know. Also, this tells the compiler or the linker to compile or link on the IWRAM. So there's this thing I need to solve, because you can't put everything in the IWRAM. But you could have a system where you dynamically allocate code and data. You can put data, but small tables. Those tables I could fit. I need to see if I'll do it in another way. And here is the final little mystery. When I was running the water effect, this 32-bit trick, I was like, oh, it runs 25 frames already. The water effect is a heavier effect than the sphere map and other stuff. It's a lot of film. Oh my god, I made it so fast for the GBA. Fast enough to be... This is so impressive. And later I came here, I came here and it was live, and I'm like, oh, I forgot to put the IW RAM from here. Oh my god, this could be faster. This could be way faster. I could get twice the speed if I wanted. So I forgot to put it, and I was delighted because if I go 25 frames, maybe I can get 30, 40, 50, 60. And I put it on the IW RAM, and I get the same. And I'm like, what the hell? Here's the case where the IW RAM, maybe because it's so dense and it does a lot of memory, maybe there must be a technical reason why this time I didn't got an update, whether it was in the in the cartridge, maybe put it on the, let's see, have I tried that? I put it in the slow, oh my god, EW RAM. Unless, but you know what, if this is not so big, this is not big, if a function doesn't fit in the EW RAM, the linker will tell you it will not be able to compile, you will get an error. So it's not what happened, I don't think. If you don't put anything, I think it goes in the cartridge RAM now. So unfortunately, the fastest one for some reason is the same as the cartridge. What if you make it into the external WRAM is slow, it's like 9 frames. This is the thumb version, 21, it's slower. How about the external? External thumb, it's 10 FPS. And I think you can even do that, I think. Let's see. It goes to the card. Maybe you can put section cartridge somehow. The thumb is slower. This code does a lot of shifts, and it might have advantage from the ARM code. By default, it's the ARM code, I see. Oh, it's not in the. Huh? If I comment out, does it already put it on the WRAM? Maybe that's what happens. Now, this is 25. It goes 25, 26, minimal. So maybe because of the density of the code, and maybe this doesn't get an advantage. I'm not sure why it would be. Do you say cartridge? Maybe it is, maybe it ignored it. It is slower, it is cartridge 17. You do say cartridge. If you say that, cartridge, oh, okay, maybe it ignores it. Maybe you can write crap there. Huh. I still don't know if you comment out, where does it go? Where do the data go? I think there were some rules. Also, if you had a static, if you have that, I think it will go to, anyway it will go to the cartridge. It does, it's empty, okay. If you were to put stuff, it has to put it in the cartridge. If you have a pointer, okay, those pointers, I malloc them. Those are mallocs, those are big tables. That's one thing, those do not fit in the IWRAM, those will be on the EWRAM maybe. Yeah, that there is nothing more. There is the 256K external work RAM. I've put that in the EW RAM. I don't. You have this no in line. If you don't put the no in line, what did I press? What did I press? Damn it. Here, I wanted here to do it. I'm just testing stuff. But I didn't need to put this one, I think. Maybe I was testing. 25.6. I don't think I need to put this one. Just the inner loop here. And see, that's the thing. That's the interesting thing. In everything I tried, uploading some code, the most important, the inner loop codes, the rendering code, on the IW RAM would get, usually you would get 50% more, twice more, 2 times more, from 25 frame to 56, things like that. In the sphere mapping, I jumped because it went 3 times more, for some reason. It's much simpler code, but it also did. And the idea is that the IW RAM is faster, so the code is read faster. When it's executed, it's read much faster. But that's it. So what difference does it make that it's this code or that code? Because they are both. The advantage with the code is that the code will be read. The size doesn't matter. It has fit in the IW RAM, I assume, because the linker didn't throw an error if it wasn't fitting. So when I comment out, it gets slower for other effects because probably it's not uploading unless the compiler decided that this one I will upload to the IW RAM because I want. Because it's doing a lot of stuff and I will do it for you. You know. I need to read more on that. Because without it, I saw the 25 FPS and then I saw, oh my god, maybe I'll get 30, 40. Maybe it's gonna be even more. Even if 25 FPS is fine for this ripple effect. If the ripple effect is a filter and it's not based on the time difference. So you would have to slow it down, else it will be too fast. And that's it. As you see, I was also experimenting with effects. I have a lot of old code bases. I have a lot of material to make demos at some point, but I wake up sometimes and I have an idea that I want to try or an optimization I want to try for various platforms. Oh, last but not least, recently I bought a Virtual Boy because it has the same processor as the NEC PCFX and it's very tedious to work with. I bought the Virtual Boy. And I just did a simple test, which is those 3D stars. You need red cyan glasses here, and on the Virtual Boy I tried it. I did the simple software rendering on a buffer. I figured it out, and I need more effort to do something more complex, like some 3D cube to see the 3D. But even with this one, with little dose, I managed to see the 3D on the virtual. It's like little specks of dust coming into my eye, you know. And this is I haven't done a frame. I wanted to do some frames per second count. I'm just increasing the count, and I figure out the Virtual Boy has 32 layers, and you can set up. When you set up a layer, you can set up from back to front if you want to have different 3D layers. You can set up for your UI, so this layer is in front, but this layer is not the whole screen. You can set up the layer in the Virtual Boy, and you can say this layer is 4 characters horizontally, 8 by 8 character tiles, and 1 tile less. You can make a layer. You can make a layer here that is full width characters, and from here those characters. You can make a cockpit layer somehow. You can make things like that. So the layer in the background, maybe it's layer 0. I don't know. It goes from 0 to 31 or 31 to 0. I don't remember which is render first and then it's full. The next layer is a tiny setup in the hardware. Four tiles by 1 tile for my thing. It's cool. And I came to one problem for now, because I set up some compiler. Do I have a make file here? Where is the make file? Oh, there is no make file. It's horrible. It's horrible because of... No, that's the VBCC. Where does that compile? This is horribly set up right now. Core CGCVB. CGCVB. Bin make. That was the original way they have set up it, and some examples. It's horrible. I should make some make file. Now here is the fun stuff. I don't see it. I can't find it, guys. I don't remember. Okay, there was an optimization function. Or maybe I'm doing it here. Yeah, I don't remember. Also, clean. I'm working with stupid makefile. Oh, I don't see it. Okay. I think... Why is it not here? Maybe in the makefile. Oh, κεφαλαίο. Yeah, I will have to do some makefile. This is all not capital. I don't remember. If you add the optimization, well, fuck you. Oh god, I know what these registers are. 26 to 31. But the linker gives you a factor. So by default, everything you have seen runs in debug mode. It's not even the optimization is disabled because I tried O1, O2, O3, O fast. Because there is a problem with the setup I found somewhere. So I have to solve this. I have to solve it if I want to do some really fast 3D engine on the Virtual Boy. Because I was searching for this error and I found, some random forum that is 10 years ago, and there was some guy called Dave, Denver 99 is the XKCD, and he was like, I have this link error. Oh, yeah, there is an issue. You can get the previous version of the compiler. Now, I would have to downgrade the compiler, and that compiler was in a dead link. And I was trying to find. I did a lot of searches that day. I'll figure it out because I care about performance. And I'm compiling for debug mode, and still it's smooth with 640 stars. I was trying higher numbers. I don't have a frame rate counter. I was trying higher number because if you put till I reach the sweet spot, if you put something higher, you see it's flickering because it cannot do full frame rate. I think it goes 50 frames per second and not 60. It goes 50 per eye. 100 divided by 50. So I was trying different values to see, because I don't have a frame counter yet. I'm curious about performance to see. That's still good. Maybe there is a flickering at some point. And I reduced the number a bit. I don't know. And here it's even crappy. I haven't put pixel. I mean, it's not optimized. It's not optimized. It's in debug mode still. I mean, that processor on the. I mean, I'm just doing stars. It's not. And I found the ways you have to do some shift. It's 2 bits per pixel. This parallax left right is for the 3D offset left right eye. You have 2 video RAMs for left and right eye. It's pretty simple. And I'm using a library, but I think the source code is open. You could also, if you want to do direct hardware access, you could see parts of the code. Yeah, the 32 layers. 31 world on. 30. I don't remember what these values are. See, it's pretty neat. Yeah, I'm writing this on the layer. Did I use the tile? Okay, maybe I set up a tile-based mode for the. And this I got from the internet, from tutorials. You have the frame buffer, double buffering for left and right eye. So there are some. Okay, I'm using some hardware. Okay, yeah, I got these functions from somewhere. So it is low level hardware access. I'm just using some tutorial functions I got from somewhere. And okay, I'm asking about this once to do the double buffering the way I know. based on the frame. Some of the stuff are taken. They set up, this is a table everybody gets, and it does something with the luminosities of the pixels so that it has everybody's using this. It has a display that is not tiring to the eyes. Wow. I should be doing something for the Virtual Boy at some point. I don't know, maybe port the Bizarro Undergroup engine, but maybe do flat shaded polygons for stun, because I will have to do everything in software rendering. Wow. And that was it, guys. That was experiments I was doing since, I don't know, since Eastern till now. When I got the Virtual Boy. Maybe I got it in January. I don't remember. But I should do more on 3DO till the end of the year. And occasionally the random experiment. I even do Atari stuff and Amiga at some point. Maybe I haven't sold those. Maybe in the next episode, because I don't even have them. It's gonna make this video longer if I talk about those things. I got a bit into Amiga and Atari coding. A little bit. I have shown some Atari ST intros, as you see in the video. And the Amiga I haven't showed everything. I used the copper to do some raster bars. I did the 3D stars, I did some sign dots on the first bit plane. Little things. Maybe next time I'll show some Amiga Atari ST stuff too. Bye!